Welcome to Retro Scale Modelling. This is part 2 of Gallery Models VH-34D Marine 1. Scale is 1 to 48. In this video is the start of the build, and I'm predominantly going to be working on the engine for the build. So I'm doing a bit of prep work to start with, getting some of the paint done on the sprue, and then I'll actually start the build. Now this build video is a little bit longer than my normal length. That's because it was quite a interesting build for the engine. There was quite a lot more parts to it than I initially thought. But anyway, let's jump into this and see how well I get on. To start things off, I'm going to do quite a bit of the prep work. So for the instrument panel, and I'm using Mr. Hobby H12 matte black for this. The reason why I'm doing all this now is because I want the paint dry thoroughly before I apply the decal. So it's crucial that I get this painted as quick as possible. The same goes for the other prep work. So I'm going for Mr. Hobby 339 Engine Grey, and this is a part of the engine build-up. Now, a lot of this engine you won't see unless you decide to display it. I haven't made up my mind whether I will or not, but I thought it would be a good idea to build the engine anyway. And my next colour is Mr. Hobby 76 Burnt Iron. There is surprisingly a lot of colours involved in this engine build. For the colour of the engine, I'm using Mr. Hobby 464 Chrome Green. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this is the correct colour. I've had a look at a few photos, and some people have had it a sort of green bulk colour, others have had it a grey colour, and so on. But I thought I'd give it the green just to show a little bit of contrast. Onto the wheels, and I'm using Mr. Hobby H12 matte black once more, and that's for the hubcaps of the wheel. For the main pipe ducts, I'm using Mr. Hobby 76 Burnt Iron again. So, I mean, a lot of these colours are going to be repetitive, but I'll go through them as I'm painting each part. This is the first bulkhead, and it's Mr. Hobby 57 Aircraft Grey, and this grey is going to be my main colour for the interior. Back to the tyres, and I'm using Life Colour Black and Rubber Shades Tyre Black here. If you've seen my videos before, you'll know that these are my sort of go-to for doing tyres and so on. The Life Colour paints for the tyres are probably the best that I've found. I'll put on the decal, so I'm using microset here as the decal solution. So first of all, I'm putting it on the part itself while the decal is soaking in warm water. And then I'll slide the decal on. If you're using your finger like I often do, make sure your finger's wet. If your finger's dry, I'll just pull the decal straight back off again. And once it's in place, I'll go over it with microset once more just to embed the decal. On the photo edge, and I'm painting this with H81 khaki, that's Mr. Hobby. And these are the seat belts that I'm painting in at the moment. So there's various parts to this, obviously the straps and the buckles. For the buckles, I'm going to be using the Hobby H Metallic Silver. Now, I have to confess, this metallic silver is a little bit brighter than I would have liked it, but instead of repainting it, I just left it. But because of that, I will use a wash on this occasion once it's built, just to dull it down slightly. Onto the seats, I'm using flat olive green. And that'll be all the framework, all the seats, and any framework that I'll be going throughout the build in the interior. And for the seats and backrests, it's Mr. Hobby 12 matte black once more. I was considering using a softer black for this, but I wasn't sure on much. I just used the black that I had at hand. Now the paint's dry, I can actually get on with the build. And first of all, there's these little brackets that have to go on. They're very, very small. As you can see, the camera's not even picking them up. They're tiny, but there's just a little square bracket that goes in. There is a couple of location points for these to sit in, and there's 9 in total to do. Then it's the two halves placed together, and each half has its own unique location point. But it's difficult to see when you're putting them together. But if you get the general area and then just line up the two halves, then everything should click into place. And then after that, there's another series of 9 little brackets that go right on the end. Now, I put these on, but when I built the engine and put it in the cowl, I couldn't get it to fit properly. So in the end, I took some of these off, and then the next ring goes on top of that. Each stage, each unit does have its own location point, and it's really handy. You know exactly how to place it on. So some of the parts can be quite tight fitting, um, which is a good thing, but it can make it a little bit tricky to go on. The next part to go on the main unit, I painted the spokes on this as Mr. Hobby 10 matte copper. Not sure whether it's got to have copper, but sometimes when I build these engines, I'll put in a bit of wire or something like that. Um, so again, I've looked at photographs. Sometimes they have these copper connections. Sometimes they're black sort of rubber. I'm not 100% sure, but I like the look of it, so that's the way I went for it. And then there's another ring that goes on top of that. This one's slightly flatter, but again, the location points makes it very easy to place on. And then the second ring goes in. This one actually goes inside the one I just placed on. Again, the location points help with this. This engine is turning out to be quite a big build actually. There's a lot of parts to it. I'll just pick it up so that you can see the work so far. That's about half of it complete. And then I'm moving on to the cow. And on the instructions, I wasn't 100% sure whether the instructions were asking you to build this around the engine or build it separately so the engine can place in. I built it separately. Now this is maybe why I had difficulty getting the engine to fit in with those other units I put on around the side. I'm not sure, but I thought it was better to build it separately. And there's a secondary casing to make up. This one's a lot smaller. The location bracket I found interesting. You have to actually build that into the house in itself. It's not already preformed, so that's a new thing. I've never done that before. It was easy to do, but it was just a little bit strange. Now this fits on to the part here, as you can see, and I'll just try fitting it to see whether everything fits. But I discovered I couldn't build this house separately. I had to build it onto the main part. This is because there's an actual space in between the housing and the actual unit itself. So you have no choice really. You have to build it around it. The housing consists of four parts. The top left, right. It is a fairly simple build, but it is tricky. I would suggest making sure it's bonded before moving on to the next one, even though as a general rule, you probably want a little bit of time to play around with it to make sure it's in the right position. But it's difficult in a sense that when you place your other part on, you may push out the parts you've already placed on. So in this case, it's better to make sure the bond is fully formed. And it's crucial that you get everything lined up on this for when it goes on to the actual engine itself. And then next is the connecting brackets. There's still little location points on the housing for this to fit into. Make sure you've got the left and right the right way around, because this could affect the position once it's actually in the model itself. So now we can put the main unit inside the housing, and this is where I was finding it a little bit difficult just to get it in. It was a very tight, and it didn't sit quite square. It was probably me, to be honest with you, but I found it easier just to take a couple of the brackets out and leave it like that. You don't really see them once it's in anyway, to be honest with you. And now I can start placing the next section of the engine on. So first of all, this how cap thing goes on first. I haven't painted these yet because I wasn't sure whether you'd be able to see these or not. So I decided not to paint them at the moment and just place them on, then I'll paint them once they're on if necessary. So once that part was on, the next part does actually cover the entire area that I was placing on. So in actual fact, a lot of the paintwork you're not really going to see. So it's up to the builder whether they want to paint this engine completely or not. Even if you decide to display it, you won't see all of the work that you put in. So I'm carrying on building this. So there's a couple of more little parts going on. I don't know the names of these. I'm not well versed in engines, so You just have to bear with me on that. But this part just goes on the top. Now, you could actually sub-assemble this before placing it on, of course. But I found it easier to build it this way. Um, that way I was able to see the location points as I was building it. Sometimes when you build the main unit to place it onto another one, it's difficult to get the location onto your previous sub-assembly correct. So building it up as you go along, for me, is the best way. This part of the engine goes inside the bulkhead, so again, I'm not really worried about painting so much. I do paint it, but it's all just for my personal thing, because you will not see this part at all. And that's one section of the engine complete. It's time to move on to the other section. When I say the other section, I mean the other side of the engine. And I'm here I'm placing on some of the pipe work. Now, each one does have its location points, but this is tricky to line up. There is a cap that goes on the pipe at the end. There's actually 3 units to go on here, and the ends sort of go up in a triangular configuration. If you look at the little cap that goes in the end, line it up with that before cementing everything in. I found this extremely difficult to line up in the end. The second pipe I'm placing on here, I actually took it off a few times because I could not get it to line up. It turned out there was a smaller pipe that goes on underneath, and it's just underneath my hand there on the right. And that really should go in there first before placing the one I'm trying to place on, because I help shore up this second pipe and trying to place on. The strut that's going to be connecting the engine to the fuselage does tend to get in the way here as well. The pipe's meant to lay over it, but it keeps on pushing it out. Again, that is because I haven't placed in the smaller pipe. So after placing the smaller pipe, you can see it just there when I'm pointing with my tweezers. I was then able to put in the proper, the original pipe I was trying to place on. It's all very confusing. The instructions are not 100% clear either on this. As I said, it was quite difficult to fit. So I tried for ages trying to fit this pipe, and I just couldn't do it. So in the end, I placed on the next part of the engine, and then cemented that in, and then tried to then place the pipe in, and I had better luck that way, because it was pressing it against the part I just placed on. It was holding on to it so that it wouldn't just flop off, and that was one of the main issues I was having. I was trying to connect it, and it wasn't holding, and it would just slip out of position every single time. But once I got it in position, then I was able to put on the end piece. This is the little triangular thing that I was on about. So it's just like the end of an exhaust, really, and it just goes on. There is actually 3 location points for this to sit into, but I took them off just in case I couldn't get the alignment done how it should be. So I took off the little pins that would hold it in place, and just pressed on the unit. Now it worked, but it's not exactly how it's meant to go. So now, as you can see, I'm making up another thing, and these are just hoses. So the mold is in 2, so it's just together. These also act as a bracket as well. It's time to paint it, and I'm using Mr. Hobby 339 machine grade for all the exposed parts of the engine. And then the set of pipes just goes on over the engine. It's time now to fit the engine to the bulkhead, and this just simply pushes in. There is a couple of little location points to make sure you line it up properly. Then once the bulkhead is on, it's time to place in the main holding brackets. Now again, like the other brackets, these are crucial that you get in the proper position, because these all help form the part once it goes onto the main fuselage. And that's practically done. There's just one little pipe to go on from it gets connected to the bracket to the engine. And while I'm fitting this is where I'll end the video. So a lot longer video than normal, but I wanted to get all the engine build in one go. It was quite a complicated build in the end, and I'm not exactly sure whether I'll be showing it in the finished build, but I'll see how that goes. So if you haven't done so already, why don't you check out the channel for my other builds? If you subscribe to the channel, please do so. Make sure that you hit the notification bell, that way you'll be kept up to date not only for this build, but all my future builds as well, of course. Hit the like button, don't be afraid to leave a comment, and of course you can share the video. But for now, thank you all very much for watching. Bye bye.